Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, and today we have to solve a mystery. Now, this is a very nice decorator lamp. The base and the columns are wood. The sockets are inside this little brass cylinder, and it has glass bell jar type shades that go over the top of it. I'll let the customer take all those home with them. The customer tells me that he purchased this back in around 1970, somewhere around there, at a store that specialized in Scandinavian furniture, and it certainly does look like something like that. I'm going to put some bulbs in it, and we're going to see exactly what's going on here. We have a dimmer switch on the cord. Plug this in and nothing happens. And that's kind of unusual on a multi-light fixture. Makes you think that it must be the switch. But I'm not going to take that for granted. This is my digital volt ohm meter. It's a survivor of my working on cars days. And it can do probably about 1,000 different things, most of which I don't remember how to make it do. But what's most valuable on it is this little setting here, where it's an ohm meter. Ohms is the resistance in an electrical circuit. And touching these two probes together, I see that I've got 0 ohms. That means electricity could fly through this so fast it would burn everything up. In other words, I've got a good connection. And so I'm going to use that to test this switch. And in here, we've got quite a bit of stuff here. A coil, some other kinds of electronics and stuff. But we should have a good connection between here and here if we expect the lights to light up. OL means out of limits, more ohms than it can actually measure. Put this on here. .23, that's pretty close. But as I turn the wheel, I notice they don't change. Turns off without any trouble. Once it's on, we're just going to have pretty bright lights and no difference. So whereas the switch will work to turn the lights on, it's not going to work as a dimmer, which is kind of curious. Because a switch that fails in the on position is kind of a rare thing. But to eliminate any doubts about it, put these little jumpers here, and that'll bypass it completely as I do the rest of the tests. Now the next thing I'm going to do is test the cord itself. The wire has one side, the insulation is smooth, one side has ridges, and the smooth side should be going to the switch, which it is. So I'll hook it up here, and I'll see what I've got. 210, 190. That is a little higher than I would expect to see in 5 feet of wire. Now this smooth wire should be running to the center terminal on all the sockets, so let's test it. That does seem awful high. 5 ohms for just basically 8 feet of copper wire. Not sure about that. Just for comparison's sakes, I'm going to check the new cord, see what it can do. Pretty close to 0. In fact, as close to 0 as this meter is going to measure. So I guess there's a lesson there that nobody really needs a 50-year-old lamp cord. Now that still doesn't explain where our problem is. So I'm going to hook up to the other terminal. That's the wire with the ridges, which should go all the way straight to the socket shells without interruption. And we'll see what we've got here. And we have nothing. No connection whatsoever. So, our apparent problem is somewhere on this side of the cord there's a break. Kind of an unusual thing to happen, but I guess it's entirely possible because I'm looking at it. Now I've taken the felt off the bottom so we can see how this thing is wired. The cord comes in from the side, and it's got a little knot here which keeps you from yanking the whole thing out of the lamp if you trip over it in the dark. It goes up through this column where I'm assuming that that's the main junction, because this wire comes back down, goes to that one, goes to that one, and they all light up at the same time. Now all of these wires are going to be replaced, so I can just start snipping away, make the next part of the job just a little easier. Now this is the kind of socket we've got. It has a porcelain body and this plate on the bottom, which is held on with two small screws. And I can unscrew this and pull it out. And someone very clever has drilled holes in there and held this plate down with two wood screws. So I'm going to be leaving that in there. And I'll probably be reusing the sockets because they do look to be in very good condition. Close inspection. And we'll be ready to start putting this back together. Now this is the junction. The lamp cord comes up here, and they've got two wires under each screw. This wire went around to this one, where another wire was underneath it going to the third light. And I'm not going to rewire it this way, mainly because these screw terminals are not designed to hold two wires. I'm not really happy about that, and I've got a better way to do it. Now quite a few things have changed in the lamp world since this lamp was new. And one of those concerns the wires, which are stranded. Many small wires make up a lamp cord. And the electrical code says that you cannot put stranded wires under screw terminals. They splay out, they get loose, they get hot, which makes them get loose again. So the solution to that is the tip of the wire will get a little drop of solder on it called tinning, and it turns that many wires into one wire, and when we tighten it down under the screw it'll stay tight. Another change was the introduction of polarized plugs, and what that simply means is that we have one wide prong on a modern plug, and it can only be plugged into a receptacle one way. You turn it around, you can't go the other direction. And why that becomes important is because, as I was saying about the insulation where one side is smooth and one side is ridged, the smooth side always goes through the switch, but the ridged side always goes to the socket shell. And this is so that if you happen to be in a room, it's dark, and you go to try and turn on a lamp, the lamp doesn't have a bulb in the socket. You stick your finger in here, if you touch the shell, you won't get shocked. It is possible if you stuck your finger all the way to the bottom and the light was turned on and it was plugged in, you could get shocked. But in North America, they consider this enough to protect most people from being electrocuted by their lamp. Now, that also brings up which one of these screws goes to the shell. Because in a modern socket, you can see we have one brass colored screw and one silver colored screw. The silver always goes to the shell, always takes the ridged wire. The brass goes to the center terminal, and it always takes the smooth wire. On this one I checked out ahead of time, and I marked the one that goes to the center so I know where it's supposed to go. And wiring it is fairly simple. I just wrap it around the screw clockwise, and that way when I tighten the screw down, it's going to go and pull the wire under the screw instead of pushing it out. And I can do the same on this side. Get it worked around underneath there. Tighten it down. Do this to the two other sockets, and we're ready to start putting it back together. Now this type of socket will always have a paper insulator between the shell and the base. And it really serves more as a cushion between the metal and the porcelain than it does insulation. So it really should not be left out when you're putting it together. Now, getting the little screws that hold the porcelain to the metal lined up and tightened down is just one of those little fiddly things that you have to work at until you finally get them right. But what you do is you start one first and then start the other before you tighten it all the way down, because it will get crooked and then your second one won't go in at all. Now, the junction is pretty simple. All the smooth wires go to the smooth wire on the cord. All the ridge wires go to the ridge wire on the cord. And like everything else, there's always a trick to it. We've got all these multi-stranded wires, and we want to twist them and get them nice and tight. And to do that, you pinch it almost at the end and give the end a little twist. And then you keep twisting until the whole thing is coiled up. Because if you just start twisting, it's going to twist down here and leave you with a bunch of little whiskers sticking out. And that's going to make it difficult when you make your connection, because you'll have little spikes in your solder joint. And all connections at the Secret Underground Laboratory are soldered. We don't use wire nuts. Certainly don't just twist wires together and tape them over. A solder connection is the way to get a good, reliable connection that won't give you trouble for years to come. Now, to get a good solder joint, you put your gun on the wire and let the wire get hot enough that the solder flows all the way across it. And you want it to soak all the way to both sides, and keep feeding the solder onto the wire, not onto the actual solder gun tip itself, because it'll really melt nice, but that doesn't mean your wire is hot enough for the solder to stick to it. Once the wires are hot, solder will flow in between it, fill up all the little spaces, and you have got one solid electrical connection that will never fail. Now, once it's cooled off, I feel it to make sure I don't have any sharp spots, and I slide a piece of shrink wrap tubing. And this is called shrink wrap because it's a peculiar kind of plastic, and when you apply heat to it, it shrinks and draws down tight on the wires, and again makes a good connection. And for a little bit of lamp overkill, I fold it down, put another piece over it like that, and hit it with the torch one more time. Now all I have to do is tuck all these wires up in here. There'll be a new piece of felt on the bottom of it, and we're ready to go. Now the last thing I've got to do is install a switch. When I'm putting in an inline switch, I like to get the bulbs in it, make sure they all light up. That way if I have a problem after the switch installed, I know it's got to be in the switch and not some other part of the fixture. I'm using an ivory colored dimmer switch here. Two reasons. One, that's what I have in inventory. And two, the customer didn't mind an ivory switch, because the alternative was waiting a week or two so we could get one brown one ordered. And just like the other one, we have screw terminals. Now this isn't exactly a screw terminal because there's a little flat plate here that's kind of a clamp. But in any case, we still do need to tin the wires. Switch connections always go on the smooth side. Peel it back a little bit. Get the wire trimmed down. Now I've got my wires tinned, and instead of wrapping it around the screw, I'll work it underneath that little plate and tighten the screw down. And do the same for the other side. Now the ridge wire has to be secured down inside the switch body. And you see these little posts right here. That's where the screw goes. So I want to make sure that we get the wire out of the way and don't drive a screw through it, putting it back together. Well, that is the way it's supposed to work. And before I end this video, I still want to know the answer to the mystery. Now, for most of the years when I worked on cars, my main job was electrical diagnosis. So I spent a lot of time playing with wires, and I never saw a wire which had a completely dead open circuit that didn't show some kind of damage on the outside. And I've looked at this piece from one end to the other, and I just simply don't see a break. There's a little pinch right here where whoever put this switch together the first time got the insulation caught underneath there, but it certainly doesn't look like it's broken. Now that's the reading we should see with a nice, clean, healthy wire. There really shouldn't be any noticeable resistance in it. I'll hook it up to the end here. It's absolutely dead. There's nothing there. I go to this little spot where the insulation was broken through, and again, no reaction whatsoever. Now we've crossed the line from diagnostics to autopsy. And I'm just curious to find out what we got here. But that's interesting, because one of the places where it's really common for a wire to break is right here at the plug, because that's where the most stress is. But obviously, that's a good place. So just a question of where do I check next? About halfway. Well, look what I just found. Now, running my hands over this thing a couple times, I did not feel that. How about that? Well, that certainly solves the mystery. No idea what that did, but you can see from the black marks on the inside, it apparently had been like that for a while, and the lamp was operated until it got so hot that it burned through. Okay, well, that's good to hear. There's not a lot of diagnostics to be done on most lamps. You're going to replace the socket and the cord. There's really not much point in worrying about why it didn't work, because everything that could affect that is going to be new anyway. So, this is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. Thank you for watching this video. Appreciate it if you would hit the thumbs button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Any questions or comments about lighting, lamps, chandeliers, furniture, rocking chairs, dressers, chest of drawers, whatever you got, I will be happy to respond. And again, thank you for watching.